try to do this all crying, but that's probably not going to work. Like many of you, I've worked in a lot of places, worked with a lot of people, and some people are your friends while you're at work, and you never see them again after you leave that job. And some people touch you and stay with you, and that's Paul. From the day I first met him, I saw something in him. I think I saw something a lot of you saw too, right, T? And he stuck with me. I would dream about him. Unfortunately, I never called his name out because the bubble would all but he was very special to me, and I know he was special to all of you, and I still can't believe it. I look up and I think I'm going to see him standing at the printer. My funny story also involves that Yankee card. Because I've lived on Onondaga for over 20 years, and before I worked here, that stinking Yankee car would come screaming around that corner on the Down Road. Who is that? And then I started here, and he worked for me. I loved him like a son, like a brother, and I miss him every day. And I keep thinking I'm going to see that Yankee car again. And just so you know, he's here, and Brim and I experienced that yesterday, didn't we, Chris? When we were trying to run letters, and we were missing one little thing. We're like, and he fixed it for us. Thanks.
One year, Paula asked me, he needed, he was an avid bowler, just professional as it was. I was concerned. And he needed an extra person to bowl with him. Oh, and so he asked me, I was like, me? You want me? Me? I can't even get like a 50 on the bowling alley. I was just so honored by that. Okay, so I decided, well, if I'm going to bowl with Paul, I have to have a cute bowling ball, and I definitely have to have cute bowling shoes. So this particular evening, and it's very nice. Am I doing that? I don't know. But this particular night, I decided to go. I started at Carousel, couldn't find the cute bowling shoes that I wanted. So I take myself all the way to Cicero, to Dick's. I go into the mall. The weather was perfect. I come out of the mall, and it's a blizzard. And now I have all kind of panic attacks, And I'm calling my husband on the phone. I can't get from out here. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get cute bowling shoes because I prayed, made my way back to the city. I just don't know why, just by God's grace. That, I think it was that Saturday, I showed up at the bowling alley with my cute ball. Never to get my cute shoes, but I risked my life for this young man. Just to have the opportunity to be a part of him asking me to bowl with him. And I just will never forget just that. It's just other stories, and that was just one of my favorite ones, because he just never got high. He just almost died in so many shoes. But he was just really an awesome person. His heart was just so great. And I don't know, the ones, like I said, if you didn't know, I apologize that you never had the opportunity to know him that way. I just love him so much. And I'm just going to rest on that. Thank you.
I'm Vicki Grace, and I used to work in the special needs office for a long time. And in 1995, when I became the learning disabilities coordinator, one of the things I had to do was go out and transitions with high school people. So knowing nothing about admissions, I trotted myself over there. And Monty Flynn was at the helm, and Marge and Terry and Paul. Well, I got over there, and I'd be laughing so hard. I'd leave my office, I'd say, I'm going over to get my box of admission stuff, and I'd be back like 3 hours late. It was half me in stitches, and be so out of control, and then somebody would walk in the office and they'd straighten right up. Hi, welcome to admissions, blah, blah, blah. So what I want to say about that is this. In my best years at OCC, I could only hope to ever make the standard of that team name, because they were amazing. They went over and above and beyond, always, for every student that ever walked through that door. Paul had the courage of his convictions, and that's not easy. And I was never prouder than when we all got thrown off email because he said what he thought. Good night, Paul, and good luck, because boy, he had a lot of brass and a big heart.
I couldn't say, I was sitting back there and I was listening to everybody talking. I kept thinking to myself, I was like, wow, I could tell my story about Paul. And one thing that I love about PK is what I call him. PK. Nobody can call him PK, right? Right. He's my PK. And he told me one day he had a brother named Jason. I said, well, now you got two. I just so happened to be the black one. And so but you know, I always used to pick on Paul because he was so together. He was so meticulous. He was so professional. And when you didn't do what Paul expected you to do, I stayed in trouble with Paul. I stayed in trouble. And I was like, little Brody, he was like, no, because in that tell But one of the things that I remember most about Paul is many of you may know and many of you don't. I just got back to work myself as having a near-death experience as well. And it was nothing but the grace of God that I stand before you now. So I'm thinking, in the last conversation I had with Paul, obviously it was about a cell phone. Everybody was about a cell phone. It was iPhone versus Android. And I think, you know, Paul was like, no, it's too much money. You know how he is. Anyway, Paul said to me, I was in the hospital, and he said, PK, how are things going? And he said, great. Just missing you. And I was like, oh. You know, I was like, that was one of those. And I don't cry like that, but I was like, oh. I mean, I just lost it. But that really helped me to understand that bond, that Paul was truly one big walking heart. He loved, even when he sounded like he didn't love you, you know, because Paul had a way to no, and the eyes that he would make, I think of all the time, I'm like, PK, I got a question. But it was just the love that you could feel from him. He was like, Jason, you're missing. You're a big gap. Let's get back to work. That kind of thing. Let's get back to our lives. So please, you know, family members, friends, co-workers, be encouraged. Do things in the spirit of excellence like Paul would have us do. KP reminded me of that. When I'm in New York City and I'm recruiting and I'm making sure all eyes are dotted, and I'll turn around to a student and say, fix that right there, because we can't read that. And when I go back, and I have to catch myself, I'm like, oh, okay. When I go back, it's the spirit of Paul. It's like, okay, make sure that you do things correctly. And as a college, as an institution, I think that would be the biggest honor and biggest tribute to being the best advocates for these students as we can be, as Paul Koresko was. He was a phenomenal advocate. So, if you see my toes today, it's because I got flip-flops on in honor of PK.
As soon as I met Paul, I knew he was going to be a friend that I would trust and care about deeply for the rest of my time here. But he was always somebody that you could talk to. If I ever had anything that I needed to say, he was definitely somebody that would listen without judgment. And that was probably one of his best qualities, and I'm pretty sure that everyone here would agree. He was always trying to get, and Dave, his best friend over here will agree with me, people to do things that they did not want to do. I am a volunteer EMT with Eve's Ambulance, and the day that this incident had taken place, I happened to meet with Paul. And we were joking around about how I had to work the next day, and he wanted to go to Silver Beach. So he kept telling me, call in, don't go. And I kept telling him I have to, I've made a commitment. And he said, I don't get paid for it, so I don't have to be there. So to make a long story short, that day I picked up the phone, called Eve's Ambulance, and said I will not be in tomorrow because I'm going to Silver Beach. So unfortunately, we never got to take that trip. So I know he's waiting up there, and on that day that we do get to meet again, we'll be making a trip to the beach.
So, Jason's story is why I kind of needed to come up, because 2 years ago, when I was here as an intern, and I know many in the admissions office have heard this story numerous times, but those eyes, you walk up to Paul's desk, you do those eyes, and honestly, the first time I did it, I said, okay, I'm talking to Amy Jackie, Jackie. That's it. I was scared. I mean, not knowing the admissions process yet, making sure everything was done to his standards, and I was frightened of him. Finally coming back 2 years later, it was a total change. I mean, the fright was gone. You know, I wasn't a college student anymore, and the one and only time I got to see him outside of work, it was me and him were like the last two there. It was the one and only time that I got to hang out with him outside of work. And I will never forget that night, because it was the first time I saw Paul and his heart outside of the office. And that's what I will always remember about him.
I was fortunate enough to work with Paul as an employee, but I also was able to spend a lot of time with him out of work. We played softball together. Dave, Little John, has been to so many games of ours. Andy Russell played with us. I thought I was a very competitive person. We had a basketball coach, and I did not think there was a more competitive person out there. And Paul was very competitive. Experiences that we had. We played on a slow pitch team on Friday night, and Paul and I were working, and Paul goes, well, why don't you come with me to the game? And I said, okay. Our game was at 5:50. We got out of work at 4 o'clock, 4:30. He said, let's go home, we'll grab my glove, and we'll head to the field. He goes, no, I got to do some things. I said, you got to do some things? He said, yeah, come to the house, you can watch TV, and I said, get my stuff together. I've never seen somebody shower and shave before softball. I sat in that couch in his apartment for an hour waiting to go to the game. I said, Paulie, we're going to be late. Paul was never called Paul. I called him Paulie. A lot of us called him Paulie. But I said, Paulie, we're going to be late for the game. He goes, no, we'll be fine. We pulled up at 5:45. Game was at 5:50. So don't ask, you know. We made it on time. And then the other thing is the inside joke with everybody that played with Paul is he took periods of time off from playing softball. And always that first time back was a very tough time for him because he would pull a muscle of some sort in his body on the first at bat. And we would talk as he hit the ball on his first at bat when it would happen when he rounded first base. And literally, he would push himself so hard when he rounded that first base bag, he would come up lame and he'd be limping all the way down to second base. So, well, there he's shot for the rest of the game, we're in trouble. And we used to play shuffleboard together. And I didn't think shuffleboard was kind of competitive. We spent one night at George O'Day's. I'll never forget, we played shuffleboard from 9 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning. And all I wanted to do was go home. But every time I would win, Paul said, no, we're playing again. Paul, I gotta get home, no, we're playing again. So we played till the door shut. And that, I just had so many great experiences with Paulie. And I think, most of all, not only here, but, I'm gonna miss those times off the odd work is on the field and in those situations.
I was privileged to work with Paul as both a student ambassador and now as a coworker. And my favorite story about Paul is when I was a student ambassador, him and Jason were playing a joke on me. And they called me in the middle of my class. And it was my sign language class. So there's no sound at all this class. And they're calling me and calling me. And finally I answer and I got kicked out of class. So I come in storming into the admissions office and Paul gives me an up-down. One of those looks and goes, shouldn't answer your phone. And I will never forget it. Paul has been one of my friends for probably close to 10 years, ever since my mom introduced him to me. And him and Jason gave me a talk about PEP, and that my future husband needs to have PEP, potential earning power. So every time I go out, I get to talk. Does he have potential earning power? So Paul was always there for advice about everything from my clothes to what's going on in my apartment. And I will never forget the words that he left with me, all the wisdom.
I really feel like I know Paul. I've known Paul forever. And I didn't call him Paul, I called him Pablo. So, and he let me, so pretty good. But just thinking about all the stories that everybody has told, just so that you know, I probably got more eyes. And, come on, Tina, what's the ID? Just tell me the ID. Don't tell me the story, just tell me the ID. And he would start at ASIM and he would just go and all the things that I had just done, but I knew Paul could figure it out. And I knew that it was always a situation that he was going to come up with an answer for, and we all know that Paul was pretty much the boss anyway, so you just kind of did whatever he told you to do. And just the confidence that we could have in him, and people talked about his meticulous, attitude about everything. He was that way about work, he was that way about, his own self and how he looked, and he was that way when he played. So what a blessing he has been to each one of our lives. And when I think about it, I actually have a New York Yankee car story as well. So Paul might not know this. Some of you might, because maybe he really did and just didn't tell me. But once Paul was giving me a ride, and I got to a parking lot and I went to open the door, and I accidentally tapped the door to the next car that was next to me. And I remember standing there thinking to myself, oh my gosh, he's gonna kill me. He's just gonna kill me. And Paul never said a word. He never let me know if he knew. If some of you know, I'm really sorry. But I knew there wasn't any damage or anything like that, but certain things were very precious to Paul. And most importantly were the people that were in his lives. Just the special heart they had. We never, had times where, it wasn't perfect. We never saw, we didn't see eye to eye all the time, but Paul was very dear. And I can't explain why he was so dear. Trish, you were trying to explain it. It was just a spirit. It was just the way he was. And even when he was mad at me, even when he was upset, even when I did something for the 9,000th time, that he rolled his eyes for the 9,000th time, it was just important. He just made you realize how important life really was. And the fact that he touched my life for all of these years, just the opportunities that I had with him, the last text message argument, I should say, that we had on the phone that went on for about an hour. My husband said to me, who are you texting me? And I said, oh, it's just Paul. It's just Paul. Like this. And so we went back and forth about a lot of things. But there's something I'll never go back and forth about. And that's the fact that I loved him. And the fact that I cherish his memory, the fact that every time I think of something that I'm doing, I'm going to be sitting there figuring out, how can I do this the right way? How can I do this the way it should be done? And just remember so many things that Paul not only taught us, but shared with us, and saying some of the stories that people have told. And I'm really sorry about the poor Paul. But just this memory, and it just makes me smile, regardless of what the situation was, regardless of what the circumstances were. I'm just never going to forget it. I'm never going to forget him, and I thank him so much for the things that he's taught me, but most importantly, to live life and to enjoy it and to have good friends, and that family and friends are huge. They're everything.